It's so hot in this room. Very fuego. I wish you weren't so loud. I need you right now. This is my last day here before I go back for the summer, and okay, well, thanks for popping up right as I'm speaking. This is my last day here before I go back home for the summer. El Clasico. And before we get back to the El Clasico setup, I need to talk about this and film this, because it's so sad to see. And while yes, there is a happy ending to the story, I still think it's not as happy as some might think. What am I talking about? So there's this game, this very, very well-known game out there. It's called Helldivers 2. And it was released, I believe, a couple months ago. And ever since its release, it has been a smashing success in the game industry. Out of all the games in 2024, it is definitely one of the most popular, if not the most popular. It is most certainly a contender for best game of the year. The reason why is because it is a massive MMO, and it has this very, very unique online service, and it allows the creators of the game to constantly add new updates to the game, so it always stayed fresh. Not to mention all the updates that were always put online, like the automations or the robots are attacking this planet, or the bugs, they're attacking this planet, and it was just a really, really cool thing to see and watch this giant community kind of gather together, because it was a very, very loyal community, and still is. I don't know why I said was. It still is. Everything was going swimmingly. Everything was fine. As long as the creators did what they were going to do, everything probably would have been fine. Sony would have made so much money. But then Sony decided to do something stupid, and in one fell swoop managed to destroy everything that Helldivers had built to this point. And that comes with Sony's decision to force players to make a PlayStation Online account and then forcing players to connect to that online account. And this is where I think the big miscommunication came in, because I immediately saw that a lot of people said, well, these are just people being lazy. They don't want to connect to the account. It's like 2 minutes to do it. It's not that bad. And yes, you're right, it's not that bad, but that's not what the problem is. It's not just, oh no, I have to connect it to this PlayStation Online account. That's not where the issue is. It's with everything else. First of all, while Helldivers 2 used to be very widely accessible on Steam to where anybody could play it, it's no longer like that. In fact, there are several regions, I think like 170 regions, where you can no longer play Helldivers 2. 170 is a big number. I think it might be more than 170. So that's already a giant market of people that can no longer play the game. Now, in terms of this PlayStation Online thing, the reason they say that you have to connect to it is for security reasons. They're looking out for your safety. Yeah, I mean, how could that be bad? It's bad because it's Sony that's doing it. Sony is notoriously bad when it comes to security. They get hacked very, very often. So the fact that they are forcing you to connect to this account that's supposed to give you safety, even though it's Sony, who has no idea how to keep their servers and stuff safe. It's hypocritical is what it is. In an attempt to make your account secure, or at least that's what they're saying, you end up at a bigger risk of being hacked because you're using this PlayStation account because you have to. You have no choice. So that's already a really, really bad situation. How could it get worse? You have no idea how much worse it can get. Because when it comes to this PlayStation account that you have to create to now use Helldivers, not everybody can get it. Because according to Sony, there are several countries where you are just not able to get the PlayStation account and you're not able to connect it. And because of that reason, if they were to continue with this PlayStation account connection thing, there would have been a massive market of people who would, in the past, had the ability to play the game and now just can't. And it's not because they can't access Helldivers, it's because they can't access the PlayStation account that's required to access Helldivers. In the past, they would have been able to do it easily, and now they just can't. And that's why a lot of people are incredibly upset, not only because of everything in terms of security, it's just not as accessible anymore. And in Sony's defense, they did say that eventually in the future, we are going to be moving forward and making players connect with the PlayStation account. That was well-known knowledge. It kind of was glossed over because people just had the option to. It was an optional thing, and most people just elected to ignore it because, one, it's kind of a pain. 2 minutes is, 2 minutes, but if you can do it like that, people will do it like that all the time. And so for a couple months, most people did not use the PlayStation account, but now that Sony is now actually forcing people to do the account, there are several people who, A, are not able to connect because they don't have access to the PlayStation account that's required for the game, and also there's several people who just don't want to do it because it's just a pain. And just like that, Sony lost a giant market of players that would have had no problem continuing to play the game. And for a couple days that was that, and we thought that this was going to be the end of Helldivers 2. In one fell swoop, Sony managed to undo months of work and months of this community being built. Up until recently, because about a day or two, Sony announced that they are no longer going to be moving forward with this connection to the PlayStation account. Yay! Kinda. In their message, they do mention something about finding the best way for PC players to connect moving forward, which is kind of strange, considering the best way moving forward is just to not include the account. But, you know, who am I? I'm not a tech-savvy person, but I do know my games, and this was just a bad decision from start to finish. And so, while a lot of people have sighed a big sigh of relief, the question kind of remains, what's next for Helldivers? And honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, this is something that really needs to be studied and some kind of case study out there. How successful Helldivers was and how quickly one bad decision from one big company managed to undo all of that work just like that. And it's scary almost and impressive in its own sort of way. Everything would have been fine if Sony just didn't touch it. If they just let the creators of the game move forward and do what they want to do, everything probably would have been fine. They wouldn't have to worry about losing profit because it just gets changed all the time. There's always something new to the game, and it's because they have a very passionate team behind the game that always wants to make sure that it's fresh and that the players keep enjoying what they play and the challenges that they face. But then you have Sony coming in like, you want something challenging? How about this? It's an account. Some of you can't get it, and if you do get it, you might get hacked. Go get them, soldiers. It just makes no sense. I don't understand where or who had the genius idea to continue moving forward, because their profits, I assume, were fine. The player base was massive, it's still massive, even months after its release, and then they do this, and now people start to leave. I hope you're happy, Sony. But that kind of all leads to the big question, and that's if the game is now on a very steady decline, or are they going to bounce back from this? Honestly, I don't know. I've never seen anything like this happen ever. Usually, if there's a game out there and then the company or the whoever is behind it, if they make a really, really bad decision, it usually spells the end for the game. But this is kind of a unique situation for two reasons. One, this is a wildly successful game that the game itself was not the problem. There's no problem and bugs with, like other games like Gollum or like that Battlefield game where it's just a very bad game from the get-go. It's a good game, and it still is a good game. Nothing inside the game itself was changed for it to be bad. It's just Sony and login things, and then people not being able to access the game because of either different country, different region, or they just don't want to get the account. So that's reason number one. And reason number two, it's not the team that's making this decision, it's Sony. It's the company that actually owns the game and is in charge of everything and overseeing it. So right now, I think it's kind of up in the air if Helldivers is gonna continue with its in the past wild success, or if things are just gonna start to peter off. I think it will become very apparent in the future because it's most people can now access the game. So I think people will either get back on the game or they won't. And I think that we'll find out within a very, very short period of time. I'd say within this month, we'll find out if this game is dead or not. But we're just going to have to wait and see what happens and hope that Sony doesn't try to do anything else with their stupid PlayStation account, because that was just a dumb move by Sony. But Sony is full of those. But we're just going to have to see what happens. But that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, if indeed you still are. My name is Brockster, and I bid you all adieu.